Hello and welcome to 5-Minute Math. Today we are looking at the 8th grade concept of the Pythagorean Theorem on a coordinate plane. This is standard 8.7D in the great state of Texas, and we are using item number 17 off the 2022 released STAAR test. If you have not done so already, please go ahead and take a moment to pause the video, work this problem out on your own, unpause it, and we will look at our answers together. So we've got the coordinates of a rectangle here, and they've go ahead and given them to us, but they're also pretty clear to be able to see that they're all on integers. And so we need to find the distance between point B and point D. All right, so point B and point D right there is a diagonal line, and it looks like we can choose either one of these. They're both going to kind of work the same way. Let's make these right triangles, because if we know the distance of these two legs, right, these two are the legs, and then we're looking for our hypotenuse, we can just use the Pythagorean theorem, because that's really one of the best ways to try to find the distance between a diagonal on a coordinate plane is if you can use a right triangle. So let's do this. All right, so I'm going to use this top one right here, and so from D to A, so D, right, it's need to find distances. I'm just looking at the x coordinates here. -1 and A is 5. Okay, so this leg is going to have a length of 6. From -1 to 5, and then from A, I'm looking now at the y coordinates. That's going to be 3, all the way down to, wow, -9. So -9 and 3 together, it's going to make 12. All right, so those are my two legs right here, 6 and 12. All right, so I'm going to use my Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So I've called those legs, but really when we're talking about that, each of these legs, one is A, one is B, doesn't really matter which one is which. So I'll label that one A, label that one B. Your C squared is always going to be your hypotenuse. So that is the unknown. Typically, when you were dealing with the Pythagorean theorem, that actually is always going to be the unknown, that hypotenuse. All right, so let's plug in these numbers. So A is going to be 6. All right, so I've got 6 squared. B is going to be 12. And that's what we've got so far. 6 squared plus 12 squared equals C squared. So that's going to be 36. It's going to be 144 equals C squared. All right, so now I've got 180 equals C squared. Now, 180 is not one of my options, nor should it be one of my options, because I have not isolated the variable. I've got it all the way down into C squared, but that's like leaving, some type of coefficient on the other side of C. You still got to get rid of this somehow, but this is a square, so the opposite of an exponent is going to be a root. And since it is a square, we're going to take the square root. So just like you've got to do something to isolate that variable if it's multiplication, you got to do the same thing if it's an exponent. And so a square root is going to be the inverse of a square. Those two are going to cancel out. We're going to be left with C. So C is the square root of 180. But we want to round that. So the square root of 180 is going to be an irrational number, 13.4164078649987, and then my calculator stops, but it goes on and on and on. So we're going to round here. We're going to round to the 10th place, and it's just going to be 13.4. And that's why when we're dealing with distances that are going to be the hypotenuse, most likely you're going to see something that talks about estimation. Is closest to, is about. So our answer here is B.